I am Daisy, your hostess, and in this video we are continuing on with the book titled Power Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox. If you're new to my channel and you just found me at this video and you would like to catch up, please do visit my book playlist. And also, welcome. And to our subscribers here, welcome back. Hopefully you're enjoying this. Please, it is very encouraging to read your comments and see your perspective. And before we go on to the next essay, I would like to give you a recap from some of the points from the last three that were in the previous video. And those were the golden key, getting results by prayer, and also the great adventure. I would like to tell you that I'm not going to really share too much and expand in it because for me, there's a lot of testimonials in my life how prayer has been effective, and for you to go ahead and look at those chapters on your own and give me some feedback and see if there's any golden nuggets that you can extract from these chapters, which, in my opinion, were really dynamic. And in the essay titled The Golden Key, Emmet Fox is actually offering you a how-to guide, which is very effective if we actually apply it. One of the things that I liked how he included in there somewhere, he actually said, whoever you are, wherever you are, the golden key to harmony is in your hand now. So basically, he's like, okay, I'm giving you all these pearls of wisdom. It's up to you now to implement it in your life. And he goes on to say that scientific prayer, it is God who works and not you. So remember, he mentioned these as treatments. And so you're channeling, and that's what he actually goes on to say, that it doesn't matter what your limitations are, what my limitation is, as long as we make that effort and, we put that little bit of faith that something is happening, something good is happening. I mean, think about it. If you're busy thinking of positive things and activating goodness and altruistic thoughts in your mind, you're not inducing negative plan into your program. And he goes on to say that you, me, we are only the channel through which the divine action is taking place. And all we need to do is really get out of its way and allow it to do what it's going to do. And another point that I'd like to share, and that was in one of those three essays, it was that no matter what is happening in your life, that we need to really believe that there is a way out from any difficulty that there may be, no matter what it is, by changing our own consciousness, by changing the way that we are seeing things. It's like change the way you think and the things around you will change. That's kind of a saying that, goes around, and maybe you have heard that. So it is up to us to raise our own consciousness, and it's not up to anybody else around us. Nobody is stopping us from thinking what we think. We are the ones that choose the thoughts, irrelevant of what is happening. It's where do we want our mindsets to be. And I truly believe that. Raising of our own consciousness from where we are to somewhere better can only be done by ourselves and nobody else, and nothing can hinder the rebuilding of our own consciousness when we choose to say enough is enough. It's time for me to level up and rebuild this great adventure, which was one of those chapters as well. So without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and turn the page to the next essay. Power Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox. This book is in the public domain. The next section in this video will be covering You Must Be Born Again. We are told concerning the teaching of Jesus that common people heard him gladly. This could easily have been inferred from the most superficial study of the Gospels. The man in the street, unsophisticated by theology or philosophy, has an intuitive perception of fundamental truth when he meets it that is often lacking in highly trained minds. Intellectual attainments may easily beget spiritual pride, and this is the only sin upon which our Lord was severe. Yet among the learned, too, there were those, the more spiritually minded, who felt themselves attracted to the new teacher. He was unconventional, hopelessly out of favor with the ecclesiastical authorities, a flouter of hallowed traditions, and yet deep calleth unto deep, and so he had his friends and followers in high places also. One of these who felt irresistibly drawn to seek for further light was Nicodemus. He had the thirst for divine things that will not be denied, but moral courage was not his strong point, and so he sought out the teacher by night. That he should have gone at all was proof of the compelling power of the urge. Clearly, the unfoldment of his spiritual nature was, in spite of defects in character, the principal thing in his life, and clearly he was dissatisfied with the progress he was making. Jesus, he believed, had something to give that was vital, and that gift might be just the secret that had hitherto eluded him, just the key he needed to unlock the spiritual treasure house of his soul. Jesus might be able to show him why he had so far failed to attain, why, as we should say in modern phraseology, he had failed to demonstrate. And the Master's explanation was simple, concise, almost overwhelming in its directness. He said, "You must be born again." This statement sums up the whole science of demonstration as it is practiced on the spiritual basis. It is verily a textbook on metaphysics compressed into 5 words. It tells the whole story. You stand where you do today, wherever that is, because you are the man that you are. There's only one way under heaven by which you can be brought to stand anywhere else, and that is by becoming another man. The man you are cannot stand anywhere else. A different man cannot stand where you are now. If you wish to go up higher, you can do so, and there is no limit to the height which you can attain upon that flight. But you must be born again. Why is it that we make so little progress compared, that is to say, with what we might and should make in view of the knowledge that we all, in this teaching, possess, at least in theory? Why do we not change day by day and week by week from glory to glory until our friends can scarcely recognize us for the same men and women? Why should we not march about the world looking like gods and feeling it, healing instantaneously all who come to us, reforming the sinner, setting the captives free, and generally doing the works? Who did hinder you? And the reply is that demonstration, like all other things, has its price. That price is that we be born again, and that in our secret hearts, too often, that is a price that we are not prepared to pay. We are in love with the present man and all the things that constitute him, and we are not prepared to slay him that the other may be born. We come into truth with our little finger, and the great things will not come to us until we come in with the entire body. And there's the rub. To come into truth with your whole body is to bring every conscious thought and belief to the touchstone of divine intelligence and divine love. It is to reject every single thing, mental or physical, that does not square with that standard. It is to revise every opinion, every habit of thought, every policy, every branch of practical conduct without any exception whatever. This, of course, is something absolutely tremendous. It is no mere spring cleaning of the soul. It is nothing less than a wholesome tearing down and rebuilding of the entire house. Is it any wonder that all but the very strongest spirits shirk it? And yet, is it any wonder that without it, one never really does get anywhere? It means, as Paul said, dying daily. It means parting with all the prejudices that you have inherited and acquired during all your life long. It means taking the knife to all the little faults of character, petty vanities, minor deceits, and all those lesser forms of selfishness and pride that crystallize your spiritual joints and are so dear to you. It may mean giving up the biggest thing in your present life, but if it does, well, that is the price that must be paid, and that is all about it. If you are not prepared to pay this price, well and good. But you must not expect to receive from the law more than you pay for. A little finger in truth is well, but it can only produce a little finger result. For a full-length demonstration, the whole body must be full of light. You must be born again. End of section. Stay right here with me in this video as I go ahead and turn the page to the next section titled Dick Whittington. Christmas is the season of pantomime in London at any rate, and few Christmases pass without the story of Dick Whittington being told again at some theater or other. The children never tire of hearing the story of little Dick and the chimes, and children, as a rule, are good judges of spiritual truth. Although we shall never be sure of the cold facts about the Sir Richard Whittington who flourished at Guildhall so many years ago, the spiritual truth about little Dick Whittington and what happened to him that evening at Highgate Hill is eternal. For the benefit of any who may not have heard the story, it can be said that Dick Whittington was a little boy who lived in old London in the Middle Ages, that he was an orphan and quite friendless, and that he was working in the scullery in the house of a wealthy merchant of Cheapside. He was very cruelly treated, however, by the other servants, and so at last, in desperation, he decided to run away. He had no one to help or advise him, no one to whom he could look for shelter or encouragement. And the place in which he found himself having become intolerable, little Dick did what so many other people do. He ran away from his problem. Of course, he had not the faintest notion where he was going to run to or what he would do when he got there. He just felt that he must move at any cost, and so he ran away. This running away from one's problem is probably the most futile thing in the whole world, for the simple reason that all your problems are really in your own consciousness, and your consciousness being the essential you, it is not possible to run away from it. It does not make the slightest difference how fast you run or how far you get. You will have to stop running sometime. And when you do stop, there you will find your problems all lined up waiting for you. Having brought your consciousness, that is, yourself, along, you will naturally have brought your problems along too, unless and until you have solved them in consciousness. And so Dick started off, making a beeline away from Cheapside and striking due north into the open fields, which he very soon reached, for all this happened a very long time ago. He followed a country road until presently he reached Highgate Hill, which he climbed. Beginning to feel tired by this time, he sat down near the top of the hill to rest. We are told that it was a beautiful summer evening, and presently, as the sun began to set, the chimes of Bow Church came floating across the fields to where he sat. Bow Church stands in Cheapside, just near the house from which he was running away, and after St. Paul's itself, it was, and perhaps is, the most important church in the city of London. If you are born within the sound of Bow bells, you are a genuine Cockney, but if not, not. So you will see how important it is. For Dick Whittington, however, the chimes of Bow bells were to mean a very great deal more than that, for in spite of all his troubles, Dick had the spiritual faculty all but matured, and was ready to speak in the new tongue. Mark chapter 16, verse 17. But how can it be, you may ask, that anybody with a spiritual consciousness should be having difficulties? Are we not taught that health, happiness, and prosperity are the fruit of just this thing? And this is an important point and worthy of consideration. It is perfectly true that the possession of the spiritual faculty does guarantee, and is in fact the only possible guarantee for all these things. But the spiritual faculty has to be recognized, realized, and brought out into manifestation. In its latent state, it cannot demonstrate. It is proverbial that most people who do develop the spiritual consciousness through coming into truth do so as a result of finding themselves in difficulties, or being down and out, to use the colloquial phrase, either physically, financially, morally, or otherwise. The reason for this is obvious once you have the key to it. The children of this world are wiser in their generation than the children of light. Worldly, materially minded people, not necessarily evil people in any sense, but people without much spiritual development, are well adapted to worldly conditions, and if they are reasonably sensible folk, they get on well enough with the world as it is. Those, however, who have developed and brought into manifestation the spiritual faculty are of another order. They are the children of light, and they can no longer live or move or breathe freely in the pagan atmosphere, Mammon. They are no longer under the lower law, but under grace. And being under grace, which is the divine polity of God, gracious and graceful too, all goes well, and all things are added as the needs arise. But between these two states, there is a transition stage. When the spiritual faculty has been developed, but is, so to say, still in the matrix of the soul, not yet born onto the plane of manifestation. And this is the stage where so much trouble appears. In this stage, your spiritual faculty, the wonder child, is mature enough to have unfitted you for the atmosphere of the world, but it is not mature enough to take charge of and manage your affairs in the light of the spirit. And now you are likely to have a bad time, because you do not belong to the world. It will kick you about like a football, and the harder you struggle, the worse will things get. This, nevertheless, is the time to rejoice and lift up your heart. For now, if you are faithful, your salvation is very nigh. These hard knocks are the indication that you are no longer in bondage to material law. The darkest hour is always just before the dawn. As little Dick Whittington sat on Highgate Hill, the bells rang out the call to evening prayer. How many thousands of other people around London heard those chimes too, but found in them nothing out of the ordinary? How many tired and heavy-laden men and women in the streets and alleys of the great city, or out in the fields and lanes adjoining, heard the very same sounds that summer evening as they floated over the roofs of the houses and across the quiet English countryside, and yet received from them nothing to help them on their way? Dick, however, had the spiritual faculty well developed, although as yet he knew it not, and to him they spoke out clearly and unmistakably, pulling him up short, drawing the scales from his eyes, and showing him with instant clearness the next step he had to take. They said distinctly, startlingly, "Turn again, Whittington, thrice Lord Mayor of London." Dick was thunderstruck at this message, but at the same time so completely convinced that he never for a moment doubted what he had to do. He immediately retraced his steps, hurried back to Cheapside, and so the story goes, not only faced up to the problem from which he had been running away, but solved it in the most complete and far-reaching manner. The wonder child was born. It appears that he first demanded and obtained his rights in the kitchen, then graduated into the shop, gradually rose through a combination of inspiration and industry to be a partner in his master's firm, married the daughter of the house, became the leading merchant of the city of London, and finally, as the bells had foretold, Lord Mayor. It is interesting to note here that the old legend bears the hallmarks of its inspiration in detail. The step that Dick had to take was the last thing that he would have thought of doing on his own account. That is usually what happens when the Holy Spirit is guiding. When self-will whispers, the message is generally the kind of thing that we want to hear, the kind of thing that we have always approved of, the kind of thing that we should have done in any case. The Holy Spirit more often tells us to face right about and reverse our policy. Again, we notice that, having received his guidance, there was no shadow of doubt or wavering in his mind. When you are doubtful or confused about a thought, it is probably not from God. When the voice of the Lord speaks, it is likely to be clear and unmistakable. It is by no means true that the thing you want to do is necessarily the wrong thing, but it may be. Some people have made a rule for themselves of thinking that the thing they want to do is probably wrong. This is a relic of the old theology. If you have been praying regularly, especially in the scientific way called treatment, it is quite likely that the thing you wish to do is the right thing. But you have to make sure. The way to make sure is to go on praying until you get a really clear lead. When you feel confused or uncertain, pray for peace of mind. Usually, it is better to take no steps as long as you are in doubt. Do not hurry. God never does. If your guidance is not coming through, it is either because in your heart you do not really want it, having already made up your mind, or it is because you are too worried and tense to hear it. If the latter is the difficulty, claiming peace of mind will overcome it. When I treat for guidance, I always say, the Holy Spirit is God, and God always finishes His work and delivers His messages satisfactorily. So my guidance must come through in a way that will be quite clear to me, and I say that it will. And it does. End of section. If you haven't done so, my friend, could you be kind enough and hit that like button? If you like what you hear or you see here on the channel, please do subscribe and share it with your friends. Let's move on now to the next section titled The Yoga of Love. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned. All the old traditions tell us that there is more than one path to the great goal, just as there is more than one road up every great mountain, and yet all roads meet at the top. So in the spiritual quest, there are several roads, all of which lead in due season to the one great end. There is the path of knowledge. True knowledge of divine things is one of the appointed paths to attainment. But that path is by no means for everyone. And there is the pathway of action, of organized activity. Perhaps one had better say, and the world needs this too. But this again usually calls for a special gift and special circumstances in which to apply it. And there are others. The shortest and the easiest way of all is the pathway of love. This really is the royal road to the attainment of the great goal. It is the simplest of all the paths, and it is the most direct and the easiest too. And it is the one pathway which is open to all, everywhere, irrespective of what their personal conditions or surrounding circumstances may be. For every man, everywhere, the true initiation through the yoga of love awaits every day. In metaphysics, we understand that divine love is the complete expression of all that is meant by the word religion. That having that we have all, and lacking that we have nothing. It therefore behooves us to give some little attention to the consideration of what we really mean when we talk about love. Of course, it goes without saying that we do not mean personal love. That is well in its own time and place, but it is not what we are considering here. In the Christian teaching, love stands for something much bigger and finer and more powerful than any merely personal sentiment. Unfortunately, as with many other spiritual ideas, there is no word in the language which is perfectly appropriate to express it. Material language is made to fit material needs, and it simply will not satisfactorily express true spiritual ideas. For these we need the new tongue of which Jesus spoke. We seldom realize, I think, how very much we really are in the hands of the dictionary. We think certain thoughts, we have certain experiences, and then language with its hard and fast boundary says, "You shall not say that wonderful thing, you shall say only this." And we find on paper the pale, lifeless shadow of the thing that came to life in our soul. So there is really no word in modern English to express the true Christian idea of love. Our English Bible uses the word charity, and while no doubt this word fitted the need fairly well hundreds of years ago, it has since changed so much in connotation that there is now hardly a word in the dictionary more removed from the thing that we really wish to express. As called as charity has become a byword. The very thought of charity, that is, of needing to receive charity, has alone led thousands of people to take their own lives sooner than have to contact the dreadful thing. And yet, in its true meaning, it should convey just what we mean by love. Perhaps we can best approach the idea by saying that Christianity understands by love the idea of universal goodwill, but plus something very much more than ordinary goodwill. That's something which is nothing less than God Himself. Love is the motive power in mind, and it is the quality of love in mind that leads it to seek for fuller and fuller expression. For love always must be expressed. What we call service, to use the term that has happily come into very general use of late, is really love in action. The principal aspects of God are life, truth, and love. These are the great trinity in which mind expresses itself, and we shall see now in what sense they are one and the same thing. Life is existence, and this is the truth of being. Naturally, life must have free expression, and love is just this very thing, this perfect expression of life. In other words, what we call love is really the full and unrestricted expression of divine life itself. That is why it always means perfect peace, perfect holiness, perfect beauty, perfect joy, and why Jesus said, "I come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly." Now we see why the converse of love is fear, and why fear is the supreme enemy of mankind. Everybody recognizes this fact today. All academic psychology is turning its attention to the overcoming of fear, and most schools of philosophy too now teach that fear is the thing that has to be rooted out, and fear turns out to be simply the absence of love. Fear hath torment, but perfect love casteth out fear. The only reason we have any fear at all is because we do not love God enough. If we really loved God one half as much as we love ourselves, of what should we be afraid? A great mystic said, "Love God and do what you please," knowing that with the love of God in our hearts, our expression could only be perfect. And a modern seer has told us, you can get rid of any difficulty whatever from your life as soon as you can love God more than you love the error. Anger, spite, resentment, and hate, all such things are just so many alternative expressions of fear. Jealousy, malice, and all uncharitableness denote a belief that there is not enough good to go around, and, therefore, if the other fellow gets all that he wants of good, we shall have to go short. And what is this but to constrict the expression of life in one's own soul? If you tie a ligature very tightly around a human limb, you know what happens. First, it becomes paralyzed, and ultimately, if the process is kept going long enough, the limb withers away altogether. Now, the absence of love has exactly this effect upon the soul. Condemnation, resentment, ill will are just so many constrictions upon the free flow of life. And since they are allowed to exist more or less in so many human souls, is it any wonder that the world is filled with sin, sickness, and death? That men and women grow old and tired and wrinkled and worn and ultimately lose their bodies altogether? That the earth is desolated by wars and famine and pestilence? Thus we begin to see the reason why Jesus Christ's teaching, under whatever name it may have been given out, has always laid so much stress upon the outstanding importance of love. Unless we build up within our own souls a real and practical love consciousness, our other activities will be more or less futile. If we have the impersonal love consciousness sufficiently well developed toward all, everything else will follow. Indeed, many students have found that very remarkable things have followed upon even a few days' special work done on this subject. All sorts of personal difficulties simply vanish away after people have treated themselves a while for love. As the months go along, their faces sometimes alter in a remarkable way, for the body is almost the first thing to respond to freedom from fear and resentment. People have told me that they have felt 20 years roll off their shoulders after treating themselves for a few days along these lines, and as they were their shoulders, they should know. The more you learn of your religion, the more meetings you attend, and the more books you read, the more powerful becomes your thought, and the more sensitive your soul. You cannot afford today to hold wrong thoughts that would have mattered very little 5 years ago. You will be very much severely punished for every lapse now than you would have been in the beginning. And this is altogether well. The pathway of love, which is open to everyone in all circumstances, and upon which you may step at any moment, at this moment if you like, requires no formal introduction, has no entrance examination, and no conditions whatever. It calls for no expensive laboratory in which to work, because your own daily life and your ordinary daily surroundings are your laboratory. It needs no reference library, no professional training, no external apparatus of any kind. All it does need is that you should begin steadfastly to expel from your mentality every thought of personal condemnation. You must condemn a wrong action, but not the actor, of resentment for old injuries, and of everything which is contrary to the law of love. You must not allow yourself to hate either person or group or nation or anything whatever. You must build up by faithful daily exercise the true love consciousness, and then all the rest of spiritual development will follow upon that. Love will heal you. Love will comfort you. Love will guide you. Love will illumine you. Love will redeem you from sin, sickness, and death, and lead you into the promised land, the place that is altogether lovely. You may say to yourself definitely, my mind is made up. I have measured the undertaking. I have counted the cost, and I am resolved to attain the goal by the yoga of love. I can do this, and I will. Others may pursue knowledge to the farthest reaches of its wondrous growth. Others again may organize great and marvelous enterprises for the benefit and uplifting of humanity. And still others may teach and heal and explore, or if they feel the call, may scale the austere heights of asceticism. But I have chosen the yoga of love. Henceforth, my field of work is right here in my own consciousness, and all my efforts and energies shall be directed to the cleansing and purifying of that from all that is not love. Moment by moment, day by day, and week by week, I shall root out from my own heart every atom of condemnation of my brother man, no matter who or where he may be or what he may have done, every atom of resentment for any unkindness or injustice that has ever been shown to me or to one that I love, every particle of jealousy of others, however cleverly it may be disguising itself, every smallest thought or feeling, in short, which is not an expression of divine love. My own heart is to be my workshop, my laboratory, my great enterprise and contribution to humanity. This is the yoga of love. And while it requires no equipment beyond the readiness to practice it, yet that readiness is likely to cost so much in the way of effective self-sacrifice that those who truly seek it are comparatively few. It is not only the simplest, it is the greatest of all the paths, great in the magnitude of its individual results, and great in the work that it accomplishes for the whole race. To practice effectively the yoga of love is the quickest way to demonstrate over all your own difficulties, and because your mind is part of the race mind, it is actually the quickest and most far-reaching way in which you can elevate the race too. It is the one path that is in practice open for everyone to enter at any moment. Here, the isolated student is at no disadvantage as compared with him who can command efficient teaching. Here, the poor man has perfect equality with the millionaire, and the dull has exactly the same advantages, no more and no less, as the intellectually brilliant. The plain man earning a modest living in the factory or store can practice the yoga of love right there among the very surroundings in which he finds himself. The housekeeper at home, the sailor on the high seas, the farmer in his field, the nurse or the doctor in the ward, have all around them in their duties the perfect material for the yoga of love. The only question is whether one is really willing to pay the price, is really prepared to put God first. End of section. All right, my dear one, please do hit that like button. Let's head over to the next video where I will continue with the reading of Power Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox.